You see the screen light up. A name appears. Your chest tightens. Your thumb hovers over the answer button, but you don't press it. You watch it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Then silence. Moments later, you text back, "Sorry, missed your call. What's up?" But you didn't miss it. You watched it happen. You chose the voicemail. And somehow, typing out a response feels easier than hearing a voice. This isn't laziness. It isn't rudeness. And it isn't just you. Your brain is doing something very specific when you avoid phone calls. Something protective. Something that makes complete sense once you understand what's actually happening beneath the surface. You're not broken. You're not antisocial. You're regulating something that feels too unpredictable to control. Phone calls ask your nervous system to do something extraordinarily complex. They demand real-time emotional processing, split-second tone interpretation, and immediate verbal response, all while you have no visual cues to guide you. No facial expressions, no body language. Just a voice in the void and the pressure to perform spontaneously. For some people, that's fine. For others, it's cognitive overload disguised as a simple conversation. Let's start with the most immediate reason. Phone calls are emotionally unpredictable, and your brain craves scripts it can control. When someone texts you, you have time. Time to think, time to edit, time to shape your response until it sounds exactly how you want it to sound. You can rewrite a sentence 5 times before sending it. You can delete a thought that feels too vulnerable. You can manage the impression you're making with surgical precision. A phone call strips all of that away. Suddenly, you're live, unedited, exposed. Your brain has to generate language, interpret tone, track conversational flow, and monitor your own emotional state simultaneously. There's no backspace button. No way to unsend a sentence that came out wrong. And if you stumble, if you pause too long, if your voice cracks slightly, the other person hears it immediately. That's not a small thing. That's your brain recognizing a situation where you have less control over how you're perceived. And control over perception often feels like control over safety. Think about the last time you sent a carefully worded text message to someone you were nervous about talking to. A boss, a potential partner, a friend you'd upset. You probably read it 3 times before hitting send. You probably adjusted the punctuation. You made sure it sounded calm, clear, competent. Now imagine having that same conversation live, with no time to prepare, no ability to edit, and the constant awareness that every and hesitation is being registered by the other person. Your avoidance isn't irrational. It's your brain choosing the format where you have the most agency. But here's the part nobody tells you. Phone call avoidance often begins in childhood, long before smartphones existed. It starts the first time you're expected to navigate social performance without preparation. Maybe you were handed the phone as a kid and told to thank your grandmother. Maybe you had to call a friend's house and ask if they could come over, and their parent answered instead. Maybe you were expected to order pizza over the phone, and you stumbled over the words and someone laughed. These moments taught your nervous system that phone calls are high-stakes social performances where you can fail publicly. And once that association forms, it doesn't go away just because you're an adult now. It gets reinforced every time a phone call feels awkward, every time you misread someone's tone, every time you hang up and replay the conversation in your head, wondering if you said the wrong thing. The behavior that once protected you from childhood embarrassment now protects you from adult vulnerability. Same mechanism, different context. This is also about overstimulation, and most people don't realize how much a phone call demands from your brain. When you're on the phone, you're processing auditory information in real time with no visual anchors. You're listening to words, yes, but you're also listening to pauses, pitch changes, breath patterns, background noise. You're trying to decode meaning from tone alone, which is notoriously unreliable. Is that silence awkward, or are they just thinking? Is that short response annoyed or distracted? Did they laugh because you were funny, or because they're uncomfortable? Your brain is running dozens of microanalyses per minute, trying to construct a full picture of the interaction from incomplete data. And if you're someone whose nervous system is already running hot, already scanning for threats, already hypervigilant to social cues, a phone call becomes exhausting before the conversation even starts. Texting removes that burden. It gives you clarity. It removes ambiguity. It lets you focus on the content of the communication without drowning in the subtext. People often say phone call avoiders are hiding, but sometimes you're not hiding. You're just trying to be present in a way that doesn't drain you completely. And this is where it gets interesting. Phone call avoidance often intensifies as you age, not because you're getting worse at socializing, but because you're getting better at recognizing what costs you energy. When you were younger, you might have answered every call. You might have stayed on the phone for hours, not because you loved it, but because that's what socializing required. You adapted. You performed. You pushed through the discomfort because that's what everyone else seemed to do. But as you get older, you start to notice patterns. You start to realize that certain interactions leave you feeling depleted. You start to value your energy differently. And you start to protect it. So the phone calls you once forced yourself to take, you now let go to voicemail. Not because you care less about people, but because you've learned that caring for people and caring for yourself don't always happen through the same medium. The behavior hasn't changed. Your relationship to it has. There's also something deeper here, something about identity and how you want to exist in the world. Phone calls require you to be someone immediately, to present a version of yourself in real time, without rehearsal. And if you're someone who's still figuring out who that person is, or if you're someone who presents differently depending on context, that demand can feel destabilizing. Maybe you're more articulate in writing. Maybe you're funnier over text. Maybe you're more confident when you have time to think. Maybe the version of you that shows up on a phone call doesn't feel like the version you want to be. And so you avoid the call, not because you're afraid of the conversation, but because you're protecting a version of yourself that you're still building. This isn't about fear of judgment exactly. It's about fear of performing a self you're not ready to perform yet. At its core, phone call avoidance is a regulation strategy. It's your brain's way of saying, I need predictability. I need control. I need to manage my energy in a way that feels sustainable. Phone calls are chaos. They're unscripted. They're emotionally demanding. They ask you to be available in a way that doesn't account for your current capacity. Texts, emails, voicemails. These are formats that let you engage on your terms. They let you respond when you're ready, when you're resourced, when you have the bandwidth to show up fully. And there's nothing wrong with that. Think of it like this. Some people recharge by talking. Some people recharge by silence. Phone calls ask you to recharge in someone else's rhythm. And sometimes that rhythm doesn't match yours. So you choose the format that feels like home. The format that doesn't ask you to be more than you have to give in that moment. That's not avoidance, that's self-awareness. And maybe that's the thing worth understanding. You're not broken for preferring texts. You're not cold for letting calls go to voicemail. You're not failing at connection just because your version of connection looks different. Your brain is doing exactly what it's designed to do, protecting you, conserving your energy, giving you the space to engage in ways that don't cost you your peace. And that's not something to fix. That's something to recognize. Sometimes the quietest response is the most honest one you have.